Chapter 5. When people rebel. What happened when the strict laws of the Britishers were implemented on the Indian population? How did the Indian kings, Indian Rajputs, Indian princes fought against them? How did the soldiers react? All these things we'll be discussing in this unit. First of all, Nawabs lose their power. Almost all the Nawabs lost their powers when they are fighting against the Britishers. Like this, the power got eroded. The Nawabs of Bengal, the Nawab of Awadh, the Nawabs always became defeated in the hands of the Britishers, either by any conspiracies or by the British strength. They defeated the Nawabs. Once the defeat happened, it has become very difficult for the Nawabs to come back. So slowly the power of the Nawabs got eroded away. Not only the Nawabs, the Indian kings, whoever tried to negotiate with the Britishers, failed to get their support. An example for that, Rani Lakshmi Bai, who tried and fought with them to recognize her allied son, whom she has adopted. But they did not recognize her, and after she was defeated in the war, she was killed, and the kingdom of Jhansi was occupied by the Britishers. Not only this, Nana Sahib, who was the adopted son of Peshwa Baji Rao II, was asked to grant a pension which was granted to his father, but they did not give him any recognition or neither granted him any pension. And Awadh was one of the territories annexed. One of the territories which was annexed in 1801, implementing the subsidiary alliance. The subsidiary alliance means you have to maintain the army of the Britishers in your court and pay for them some amount, the subsidiary grant. If you fail to pay the amount, the land from your territory will be grabbed off slowly as parts, as a compensation for what we did not pay the taxes. And moving on further, in 1856, the entire Awadh was taken over by the Britishers. And not only this, Mughal dynasty to end was another major target of the Britishers. Bahadur Shah Jafar was recognized as the last Mughal emperor, and Canning gave a statement that after Bahadur Shah Jafar, nobody else will be recognized as an emperor, they will be recognized as princes only. And he was moved out of Red Fort, and separate arrangements were made for him to stay in the Delhi region. Like this, not only the Nawabs, from the Nawabs to the Mughals, everybody slowly or later lost their powers. It was Nawabs who lost their power first. The Nawab of Bengal, the Nawab of Awadh, the Nawab of Oudh region, all of them lost their powers, one battle or the other battle. Next, many of the kings who tried to negotiate for their kingdoms to protect from the Britishers failed and could not negotiate with the Britishers, lost their kingdoms. Example, Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi. Nana Sahib, who was the son of Peshwa Baji Rao II, also tried his level best for getting recognition from the Britishers, asking them to recognize him as a son because he is an adopted son and grant him the pension which is granted for his father. So he wants that to be continued after his father's death, which the Britishers denied. And Awadh was one such territory which was annexed in 1801, and a subsidiary alliance took place. Subsidiary alliance means sending an army, and for the maintenance of the army, we have to pay some amount to the company. This is called subsidiary alliance. But once you fail to pay payment for the subsidiary alliance, you lose your territory partly in parts. Like this, in 1801, Awadh was made as a subsidiary alliance. Then in 1856, completely the Awadh was taken over. The Mughal dynasty to end brought Bahadur Shah Jafar as the last ruler of the Mughal emperor. The Britishers also targeted the Mughals. They want the eradication of the Mughal emperor. So they gave a statement. The Mughal emperor will be Bahadur Shah Jafar, the last Mughal emperor, and after him all the sons of Bahadur Shah Jafar will be called only princes. No more an emperor will be. So the Mughal rule emperors is going to come to an end with Bahadur Shah Jafar's regime. The peasants and the sepoys. How did the peasants react for the rebellion? And how did the peasants got involved? And why did the sepoys do the revolt? First one, the peasants and the zamindars are very particular and they used to collect very high tax and they used to maintain a very rigid method of collecting taxes at any cost. The taxes are very high, even though they don't have the proper rainfall, even though they didn't have the proper supply of water, though the crops failed, the people are forced to pay high taxes and a rigid method was applied in collection of the taxes. So many of the farmers, peasants could not pay the taxes properly in time, and in turn when what they have taken loan from the money lenders, they could not repay back the money lenders loan also, resulting in losing their lands what they have been cultivating from many generations. So the peasants and the farmers or the zamindars used to force the people, especially the farmers and the peasants, to pay high taxes, and they used to collect taxes with force, and this resulted in many of them failing to pay back the bank loans or the loans taken from the money lenders and losing of their lands and giving up their lands from which they have been cultivating from many generations together. Now, once we move out from the peasants, let us now move towards the sepoys. Indian sepoys are also dissatisfied, discontent. Why are they discontent? What is their problem? That is, new rules, religious sensibilities. There are certain new rules which force the Indian soldiers to be dissatisfied with the company. First is their pay allowances are very low, not matching with the work what they are doing. And the second one, they are having certain rules which are being imposed on them, which are questioning against their religious beliefs. Many of them believe that when we cross the sea, we lose our purity of the nation. So they don't want to go to any overseas projects when the company requires them. In 1824, a similar situation has arrived when they have to go to Burma. Many of them agreed to go to Burma through land route, but not through waterways. And in 1856, the company made a rule that compulsory whoever is looking up or taking up a job in the company has to serve as per the company's requirement. If the company requires you in abroad, in the overseas assignments, you need to cooperate and go ahead and take the task. Like this, there is dissatisfaction among the peasants and among the soldiers. The peasants are unhappy because the taxes are very high. The crop is not up to the mark and they are following very rigid methods of collection of the taxes. But when it comes to the Indian sepoys, their pays are not matching with their work, and they are also having new rules which are questioning or against the religious sensibilities. And also in 1824, when they were asked to move to Burma, people, many of them rejected to go by waterways because they have to cross the sea. They prefer to go by land route, and in 1856 the company made a new rule stating that if any of the individual takes up a job in the company, has to serve the company as per its requirement. There is no exclusion given to any of the individuals basing on their religious basis or any other reason. If they have to serve abroad, they have to go to overseas and serve and take up the job. Otherwise, they will not allow them to take the job. Like this, the Indian farmers and the peasants are highly dissatisfied, and most of the soldiers are also peasants. Background in the villages, back the families are doing farming, and these rules, these regulations frustrated the peasant community and also the farmer community as well as the Sipai community. That's why the revolt spread like a wildfire, not only in the Sipais but also among the peasants. Chapter 6, Colonialism and the City. Colonialism and the city. In this chapter, we are going to discuss the story of an imperial capital. How was the capital built? What happened to the capital during the imperial rule? Now, moving on into the details. What happened to the cities? We have discussed in the previous lessons. What happened across the countryside? The Britishers have entered into the villages. They have divided the entire village lands into Zamindar's control. They have followed certain methods for tax collection like the permanent settlements, the Rayatwari system, the Mahalwari systems. Well, ultimately all the systems have failed. They could not get much profit from the countryside. Then parallelly during this period, what happened in the cities? If we talk about the cities, we would be very clear like about which city we are talking. The development of the each city has its own reasons and its own drawbacks. For example, if I take a city like Madurai, where it is a temple town, the development of Madurai, the temple town, reasons would be different to that of a city like Dhaka, where the Britishers established the manufacturing units here. Due to the establishment of the manufacturing units, the people started to migrate towards that region where the units are established in search of opportunities. Then they started to settle on nearby places, and then the city got emerged like this. So people migrated due to the manufacturing unit established in Dhaka, availability of the jobs in Dhaka. But when it comes to Madurai, temple town, many of the people used to come and visit the temple town. As many of the people are coming here, the basic facilities providing for them. So many stalls might have been come up. Many skilled people might have been staying there during the construction of the temple town or the temples in the town. And as the time passed on, these people started to establish hotels or resting places for them. And like this, the commercial activity has increased across the temple region and the town emerged like that. So, the reasons for the emergence of the temple town are clearly different when it comes to the reasons of establishing an industrial town here. So, like this, it starts varying. Now, coming to western side, the European countries, towns and cities got emerged because of industrialization, which happened from 1718 to 1820, where many industries got established and people moved close to that areas and these regions became more crowded. In the late 19th century, we have the cities which got emerged in the western side, emerging as the capital cities or the important towns of trade due to industrialization. But in India, we have the new towns coming up as the presidency cities. What are the presidency cities? The cities which are used for the administrative purpose, the cities which are established and through which the administration is run across in that particular state is known as presidency city. Like in simple terms, we can call them as capital cities. Like that, we have the emergence of Bombay, Bengal and Madras. For different provinces, they became the presidency cities. During this establishment of the presidency cities, we can now focus our attention towards the older towns of our country. The older towns of our country are Machilipatnam, Surat and Seringapatnam. Machilipatnam is now the headquarters of Krishna district, which is very closely connected with Vijayawada, just across 50 to 70 kilometers away from Vijayawada's mainland. Now, Machilipatnam, Surat and Seringapatnam were initial points where the Britishers established their trade points or settlements, did their trade. From Machilipatnam they used to do the trading, exports and imports. Through Surat port they used to do the trading, and Seringapatnam down in the Karnataka region also they used to do trading here. But as the emergence of the new presidency cities here, Bombay, Bengal and Madras, the people started to shift from Machilipatnam, Surat and Seringapatnam towards the towns which got emerged as new cities, that is Bombay, Bengal and Madras, due to various reasons. One, due to get the convenient places for them. Second, they may get some administrative opportunities for them to work in the administrative offices. So in search of these jobs or these situations, people start to migrate from many villages to these places. And this led to the deurbanization of the cities Machilipatnam, Surat and Seringapatnam, and urbanization of the cities of Bombay, Bengal and Madras. What is urbanization and what is deurbanization? Urbanization, people move from villages to towns, from rural areas to urban areas. With this, the urban areas get more populated than the rural areas. So getting more populated from the rural areas means the migration of the people from the urban areas to the rural areas is not at all happening anywhere. People migrate from rural areas to urban areas. When people are migrating from rural areas to urban areas, that is called urbanization. When people are migrating from urban area, the town where it got urbanized, from here if they are moving to some other place, not to the village back, people moving from this particular city or town to the newly emerged cities, like for example from Machilipatnam to Madras, then this urbanized Machilipatnam is now getting deurbanized. Now people are moving from here, they are going to Madras. People are moving from Seringapatnam going to Bengal or Bombay. So people are moving from Surat going to Bombay. So the urbanized places till now are Machilipatnam, Surat and Seringapatnam. But now as the situation is changing, people start to migrate from these places which are already urbanized. From here they are moving to other places. So again we cannot call it as urbanization. Once people are moving from rural areas to urban areas, we can call it as urbanization. But now people are moving from urbanized places only to another places. This is called deurbanization. So deurbanization of the cities of Machilipatnam, Surat and Seringapatnam happened during the early 19th century because of the establishment of the presidency cities like Bombay, Bengal and Madras.